Hi, and welcome to Scale by Design. Today, we're joined by Jon Conelias. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and I'm really pumped to have this conversation with you today. Before we jump into it, though, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and what you're currently up to?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I feel like at some point I became a veteran of this, and I don't know when that was, but now I'm feeling more like the old guy in the room where I have more gray hair than dark hair. At least that's what my kids tell me. So my background is I early on in my career I did investment banking and realized pretty quickly that that wasn't what I wanted to do and fell in love with startups. So this is now actually my fourth startup. First is CEO and founder, but the other three were I was employee one at the first one and CFO. The second one I was CFO and VP of Ops, and the third one I was CFO. And so one was a IoT product that was a cooking thermometer that we sold to Weber Grills, and now it's built right into the grills. It's called the iGrill. The second one was a e-commerce company called the Grommet that focused on new and innovative products. And we ended up selling that company to Rakuten and then sold it from Rakuten to Ace Hardware. And then my last stop before Elevent was a company called Scout Exchange, where we were an AI machine learning marketplace, helping connect recruiters and companies to more efficiently hire. We sold that in the summer of 2020 to Aquent. Now I'm the CEO and founder of Elevent, which is an events platform. So we do in-person events, we do virtual events, really focused on connecting teams and clients. So I think 30 and under people. I mean, we can do larger events, but really a platform where you can come browse and book instantly events of all different kinds. Right now we have over 700 different virtual and in-person events. And a little bit of background is that we founded the company in September of 2020 and scaled it during COVID. Now we're up to 15 people and have done over 5,000 events in the last year and a half. And we're lucky enough to raise capital before kind of the markets turned upside down. So we're plugging along and hoping that the recession isn't horrible.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm right there with you. And one of the things we talked about just diving into today is just really your experience. Obviously, you've gone through several successful exits and scaled teams and organizations. So I would love to talk with you a little bit about from an early stage to hitting growth stage to planning and building toward an exit. I would love to just dive into some of the biggest lessons learned that you've learned over the past three exits, and maybe that you're now applying in your position as founder CEO. Can we talk about, are there any like light bulb moments or big takeaways that you've learned throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are going to sound pretty cliche. I mean, this is the most cliche one to say, but I think it's really true, is having the right team is everything. If you don't have the right people at the different stages, it's really challenging to get the right things done in the right amount of time and in an efficient way. So team is everything. And I spent a lot of time early on recruiting people for my own network. And I think early on in the startup, I mean, you're not going to have the brand name. You're not going to have the ability to spend a lot of money on their salaries. So you're selling them on you and your belief in the idea and then selling them on the actual idea so they believe it too. And so trying to find those people that really believe, will buy in, but are also really talented is extremely important. Two, I think it's, as a founder CEO, I mean, this is a lesson where I think we all believe that we all have all the answers all the time, or we want to. And I don't think that's necessarily true. It's not going to be, it's funny, we get into these conversations with investors all the time. And they're like, if you can just grow 20% month over month, you could raise capital really well and you'll be a really successful company. And it's like, yeah, of course. Like everybody would do that if they could. Like, no, there's nobody in the world that would ever say no to that. So the challenge is like, it's never month over month consistent. It's ebbs and flows. There's good days, there's bad days. And so I think the moral of the story is you may not have all the answers, but getting up every morning and putting your best foot forward and moving forward, you start to find what those answers are. But I think part of it is really listening to your customers and listening to your team and understanding what they're saying, and then how to apply it to the business to make sure that you are on the right track and you can continue to accelerate what you're doing. I think the last lesson is that it's constantly changing. Like you may have an idea and it may work for a while, but at different stages, you have to continually reinvent yourself. So for us, at least in this venture, I mean, going from 0 to 1 million in revenue was, we had a strategy and we could do it pretty quickly. I think trying to figure out how to go from 1 million to 3 million, we need a different strategy and we need a different tactic. I mean, the demand is there. It's just we're not able to capture it in the same way that we captured the first million. So, and I think you'll see that at every stage of the business, where as an executive team, you go from like doing everything to doing some stuff and setting leadership goals to really the structure of the organization becomes massively important, where you're all of a sudden not the one doing, but setting the high level goals and then making sure that the company is running effectively and efficiently. So, and I think there was a quote from Brian Chesky, and I'm sure there's others, where like you're constantly every 6 months or a year, your job is completely different as a founder CEO if the company's changing dramatically.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I mean, just over the past year for me, things are changing quite drastically. We actually on last Friday just surpassed 5 million ARR at Secure Vision, and it's really interesting because at this point in time, it's the first time that we've actually had an executive team built out. So I have a VP of operations, VP customer success, VP of marketing. I am just now for the first time stepping out of sales. Like I did all the sales for the first few
Yeah.
years. So because my background was in sales, I decided to hire a VP of marketing first. And now we're bringing in a strategic advisor to help us standardize our sales process so that we can plug in a salesperson and have repeatable success there. But it is 100% true. Like I've just seen my role has changed. It's basically, this is what I do. I do content production. It's kind of changing into more of like a chief growth officer role, where it's going out, it's meeting people, going to events, going to events like SaaStr, going to dinners, groups like Pavilion, and just producing a lot of content for primarily LinkedIn. I mean, so it's definitely, you have to be adaptable as a founder CEO, right? And just do whatever is going to drive the business forward most drastically, right?
Yeah, and I've had a similar shift. I mean, as we've really started to, I mean, for us, we're product-led growth, and so a lot of it has been inbound, mostly through paid search and other media, but like organic is starting to really pick up. And one of the best ways for us to accelerate organic is to get more meaningful backlinks. And so getting out and doing press and PR and just getting the company name out there is right now one of the most valuable things as the CEO that I can be doing. And so that's what I'm doing. And it's funny because it goes all the way down to like, what blog posts are we posting? What keywords are we focusing, all the way up to like, how are we generating links and generating excitement around the platform. And that's just part of our acquisition strategy. But then we're transitioning into selling an enterprise product where myself and my co-founder, that hasn't been our bread and butter. And so how are we leveraging our own networks to take something that is working and we've already sold a bunch of times, mostly by accident, and really accelerate it.
For sure. Well, that's maybe we start there with the demand and acquisition strategy,
Sure.
because I think we could riff on that. And that's actually something that we're currently expanding as well. So I'd be curious to just exchange strategy and tactics and see kind of what we're doing. So you mentioned that the path from 0 to 1 is very different from the path to 1 to 3. So what worked initially from that 0 to 1, and then how are you thinking about expanding on that strategy from 1 to 3?
I don't know what was harder, 0 to 1 or 1 to 3. I think 1 to 3 is challenging in a different way. I don't know if I'd ever want to go back to 0 to 1, because it literally started with a presentation and a Wix website and just blocking and tackling. And it was just, the more that you could grind, the better we would do. And then what really happened is the platform evolved. We could then drive traffic to the site in an effective way and convert that traffic in a cost-effective way. And so that was really, we could then scale up until a limit of how effective could we convert those people. And so, and with each new feature launch, as we can improve conversion, we can then kind of raise that bar more and more and more and that's mostly on the paid side. And the organic side, it's a longer game. I mean, we re-platformed, we rebranded in February and March and April. And so we're kind of starting from square one of how do you slowly drive, like improve your domain authority, improve your link backs, improve your content, and get more content on site so you can really and put together a robust strategy. So for us, it's really been, so far, it's been mostly product-led growth as far as like, how do we drive people in through different channels? How do we create a robust referral program? So we're in re-engagement program, so we're keeping the customers that we have. And then how do we get people that are organically looking? Because organic can be 10x what paid could be. So there's a huge opportunity in organic, but it's a much longer road. And then I think as we look forward, that's where we get more into the outbound, where I think that's where you kind of live, but where, how are you getting in front of those people that aren't actively searching? How are you then convincing them to buy an annual subscription and not buy an individual event? And so what feature sets, what do they need? And I think to go back to one of your lessons that you asked me is like, never build something before you know what it is. Like, I feel like a lot of founders get in that place where like, we know what our customers want, and you can put a presentation together, you can put a clickable prototype together, and you can try to sell it before you actually have it. I mean, you do need to be able to deliver that on the end, but like, I've seen so many people build things that just nobody wants. And if you can avoid that at all costs. Because I think that can be, I mean, that can be a death sentence.
Oh yeah. I mean, particularly in the early days when you don't have particularly limited funding, right? To build your initial feature set and product. It sounds like you were running paid search pretty early though. So from 0 to 1, did you already start paid search at that point in time, or was that more of a motion?
No, we did. And paid search was really a test for us too, of like, I mean, it was a leading indicator for what type of supply we needed. So we're an events platform where we have to go get the supply and get them on our platform, but also get the customers. Yeah. And so by at least looking at paid search data, we could see what demand was out there for different categories of events. And so that really led a lot of our supply decisions early on.
Gotcha. Yeah. So our journeys was, I'm curious, I want to compare a little bit or just show that any kind of contrast or similarities or whatever it might be. But so initially from 0 to 3 million, we were primarily inbound. It was primarily referral, word of mouth, which I think is pretty consistent with services businesses. So I think that's probably pretty consistent, but that was really what we were. And then I posted a fair amount of content on LinkedIn, and we would drive some business that way. Right when we hit 3 million, we hired our VP of marketing like the same day. I reached out to my finance advisor. I was like, okay, I got a guy. I think he's good. Can we go? Let's go. Right. So the same day we hit 3 million ARR, I made that offer. We got somebody in, and he just started like opening up different channels and experimenting, not really even optimizing, just like, hey, let's just kind of try some different things and see what works. And we opened up email, which I think has already generated like close to 1.5 million in ARR over the past like 5 months.
Are those emails to existing customers or emails to more cold outreach?
New, like cold outreach. And I was not anticipating it being as effective as it has been, because it's kind of like this interruption marketing. And I was like, who's gonna, like, these are, we're not doing contingent search, right? Like we're doing RPO contracts valued at anywhere from like 180,000 to 7 figures, right? Like, is interruption marketing really going to work for something that's a little bit more strategic and longer sales cycle? And it has been. So that's been kind of a lesson learned, which I was kind of curious to see. We started doing outbound channels. Like we also did. We got some different tools to like send a lot of like mass in-mails. We've generated some good leads and revenue from that. And then we recently started paid search on Google. And within 24 hours, we actually got a pretty good lead of starting our Google search. So we haven't converted any revenue from Google yet, but we think it's just a matter of time. I mean, we recently started. So
yeah, it's fun. I mean, your Google experience sounds very much like our LinkedIn experience. And it's funny how it changes, because when we started the business, we're like, oh, heads of HR, events people are going to love this. And in reality, the events people focus on the bigger events, and heads of HR don't want to plan an individual event. They want a solution. It's really that like event coordinator, HR coordinator or the EA that's actually doing the planning. And so we had to kind of reassess who our customer was at that time. And so when we were doing LinkedIn ads, we were getting a ton of people to click on these ads and give us their information in a really cost-effective way, but then we didn't have a solution to sell them. So now that we finally are getting to a place where we have a solution, now we have to go back and be like, okay, this was working a year ago. Let's see if we can get it going again in this way to really drive people to the site. And really what we're going to do is we'll put a landing page on site next week and really try to get them to come to the site and talk about the different offerings that we have.
How do you decide about, like, in terms of splitting budget between Google and LinkedIn? Like, what does that strategy look like?
I mean, really what we're doing in LinkedIn is testing. So it's a small percentage of the overall budget. I mean,
Okay.
right now, paid search and the other stuff we're doing are all kind of tried and true and proven. And really what we're doing is assessing what is our lifetime value of these customers, and then backing into what can we spend on those channels to make it cost effective.
Gotcha. And on LinkedIn, like, what kind of ads are you doing? Is it like sponsoring content, like organic content initially that performs well, or is it like more traditional ads? I mean, what does that look
We
like?
try to mix. So we've done lead ads, we've done ebooks where we're trying to get people to download content. We've done kind of come and buy an event, which frankly is probably the lowest performing thing. I mean, I guess people aren't, where Google, like, you have a very high intent to buy if you're searching for something. On LinkedIn, if you're just browsing LinkedIn, like your intent to buy is much lower. And so we haven't effectively been able to get them on site to buy, but again, I think there's a mismatch between intent from the platform and what we're offering on our platform. So
Yeah.
I think that for us, it's a little bit different. And then I think that the other thing that we are looking at doing is, how do we get in front of all these people that, I mean, right now, there's only a portion of people that actually search Google when they're looking to do stuff. They either have prior relationships or they're figuring out a different way to do it. So, or they don't want to just click on paid ads. So I think for us, we know who our customer is. Now we just need to get in front of them in cost-effective ways.
Right. I mean, that's why our VP of marketing wants to optimize Google prior to getting involved too deeply with LinkedIn paid, because of the high intent. Like, he really likes the fact that it's like, okay, we can get in front of really high intent buyers. And he feels like it's like a little bit more of a straightforward, repeatable motion to get in place. And once we figure that out, then we're going to be going more into
Yeah, I mean, it
LinkedIn.
all depends on, like, what is your landing experience? How are you getting them? I mean, then you can play the whole organic game as well, where somebody's out searching for RPO recruiting. Like, where do you show up in the organic search? Another interesting nugget is always Bing as well. Like Google owns most of it, but there are some other opportunities as well within kind of that environment as far as kind of like inbound search traffic.
For sure. Right now on LinkedIn, I'm doing a lot of organic just content, and I'm really focused on just optimizing my content strategy. So I have, like, gone through all my posts from the past several years and looked at all the highest performing content, and then, quite honestly, focusing on dumbing down that message to make it really easy to consume, and not getting too tactical or operational in my posts, and just like being very clear with like simple takeaways. And that's really helped drive a lot of reach. So, like, I'm more consistently getting viral posts where, I mean, last week I did a post that's been viewed like 450,000 times.
That's
And
awesome.
it's
Congrats.
like, it's in front of tech. Like, most of the people engaging, it's all tech. So it's like, obviously if we ran paid, like, that would cost thousands of dollars. So right now, my time, obviously the cost is my time, really is my, and there's the opportunity cost there, but we're investing a lot in organic, and that is paying dividends, because, like, there's a lot of times we'll get leads where a VP will say, "Oh, my CEO told me to reach out," and I'll look up the CEO and I don't know who that is. So obviously there's conversations happening in the background that are leading to leads, qualified pipeline. So that's been a really interesting motion. And now that we've seen success with that, I'm really doubling down on just LinkedIn organic for now, with the hopes of getting into, again, like the paid side probably later this year.
That's awesome. Yeah. That sounds, I mean, that sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, so far. So
What
I'll keep you posted.
what kind of content do you share? Is it like blog posts? Is it just posts from you just talking about
Yeah.
something? Is it sharing relevant cat? Like, what did you find when you went back and looked at the engagement? Like, what type of content were people actually engaging with?
So there's some certain topics that people really seem to like, and usually they're not topics that I find as interesting, quite honestly. Like, I'd rather write a post about, it's posts, by the way. So it's just organic posts that I just do on my LinkedIn profile, not on the company page or anything. It's just online. but like I would love to do a post about like greenhouse implementation and optimizing data workflows and analyzing what, what reports should we be using at scale to optimize talent acquisition. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I like, which is not the kind of stuff that most people like. So the post, for instance, like that got, around 500,000 impressions, was, very basic. It was hire people that have done around 70% of the job before. The 30% they haven't done is why they accept your offer. Players in the tech industry don't accept offers for roles that they've done 100%. Obviously, generalization. Obviously, there could have been more context to put in that. But again, kind of like simplifying the message to make sure it's consumable within, 3 to 7 seconds. That post is one of the best performing posts I've ever had. It's only 3 sentences and it's close to 5,000 engagements and 450,000 impressions right now.
That's great.
So what, and the other thing that I did was I actually researched other influencers in talent acquisition, and I reviewed all the topics that they're posting about. And whenever they have a post that gets like over 1,000 engagements, I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk about that stuff. So I don't try to like reinvent the wheel. Like sometimes it's just like, what are the things that people care about, right? It's mobility, it's flexibility, it's, those type of things, right? For my space specifically. So I've just kind of found out what the audience likes. And then I just try to really provide a simple message around that.
Gotcha.
And that's actually like interesting. So we hired, have you heard of Scott Leese by any chance?
No.
He's big on LinkedIn. So he's like a revenue advisor. I think he's like a four-time VP of sales, successful exits, board of director, probably, 15, 20 companies. So we brought him on as a sales kind of strategic advisor. And one of the things that he's helping us with is standardizing our sales process, so that we can make it more repeatable, land more enterprise business, hire a first salesperson, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And like one of the main takeaways was like, I was going into my pitch and how we position our company. And he was just like, just stop. Like your job isn't to convince people that you're smart or that, you have all this tactical insight. He's like, you need to simplify your message. So I went from like this long-winded, like, we provide an embedded recruiting solution that has a similar point of impact to an internal recruiter, has internal select, all that garbage, to you can borrow recruiters from us. Like just really simplifying it. Right. And so I've basically taken that philosophy into our content, and the content's now blowing up as a result of just making it really simple for people to understand.
I had a pretty similar experience when we were first doing venture raising, where I had this deck that had what I thought was a really strong value prop and positioning. And an advisor of mine was like, cut it down by half. One, cut it down by half, but also simplify it, like simplify the verbiage, not because they don't understand, but because you need to be able to portray what you're doing in a really simplistic way so they get it really quickly.
I mean,
and and also like, it's funny, there's so much stuff in there like, we believe in emotional elements, and they're like, you're an events platform. What are you? And one of the things too is we were talking like, are we an events marketplace? Are we events SaaS? And I just started to use the word platform, and like everything clicked all of a sudden. My close rate went to like 30% on VCs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was from like 0. I probably closed 1 or 2 before then, but like it was pretty early on. But like then it was like, so the way that you describe things and the simplicity is extremely important. I totally agree.
Yeah, like one of the mistakes I was making was going over too many differentiators and value adds. Like I always just had this desire to explain like everything about why we're better. Like I got to go, and Scott was just like pick one of them. Like, what's the top thing? Just, okay, say that, and then just don't say the other stuff.
Yeah, it's something that we have to continually correct ourselves on. Like we want to be cute and fancy with words like team building experiences to create bond. And it's like events for connection. Like it's, you know what I mean? It's if you can be succinct and direct, and people can get, especially with product-led growth, like people need to be able to instantly understand what you do and who you are when they land on that page. Otherwise, they're going to bounce.
I totally agree. And I want to kind of like just work our way kind of backwards. So the second point you made was, founder CEOs, we don't have all the answers, right? and just kind of figuring shit out as we go. But I would kind of like to dive into um, how to how to go about like scaling out an executive team, how to bring on advisors. I mean, I think that that's like a critical skill set. I mean, this is also about like team getting the right team in place, but knowing when you know more about your business than anybody else, and so it's you need to make the decision versus okay, it's time to bring in the advisor or the specialist. Could you talk to us a little bit about like your
Um,
philosophy toward that?
yeah, I mean, I think one, and this sounds cliche too, but surround yourself with people that you think are smarter than you. And that's, I mean, I try to do that every day. And also not just smarter than you in general, but smarter than you in this specific discipline. Like I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. And so I try to surround myself with people that can backfill my weaknesses more so than my strengths. If I surround myself with people that are just like me, we're going to be a pretty one-dimensional company. I think as far as recruiting, I mean, I think it's hard. It's like somebody told me, like, if you hire the wrong executive, it's 6 months before you realize it, maybe another 3 months before you fire them, and then you got to hire somebody else. And so like it sets you back a pretty exponential amount of time. So how you go about recruiting people in that process and understanding that, like, there's no easy way around it. I mean, I think the ways that I have found that I can kind of squeak around is if I've worked with people in the past, leveraging my network, getting referrals. But again, that's still, somebody could be amazing at one place and just not be the right fit at another. And it's nothing personal against them. There could be a whole variety of reasons why that doesn't work out. So if anything, I mean, I would figure out ways to validate and test up front. Like, I mean, for like our engineering talent, we make sure we do tests or even virtually, like code assessments. So like, are we getting who we think we're getting? I think as you get into leadership positions, there's a lot more kind of less tangible skills. Like how do you exhibit leadership qualities over time and motivate your team and hire the right people? Like those are things you can't really test for in interviews. So I'm not sure I have a silver bullet on that one, but it's more of just understanding where your gap is the biggest and start there, is probably what I would say.
Yeah, I have like kind of that's so this is an opinion that I think a lot of people don't like. I think it's somewhat unpopular, but I think at a startup level, particularly for a seed, Series A, in some cases maybe Series B, I think it's just incredibly important to get people that come from a similar environment. So if you're, a startup, SaaS product company positioning toward an enterprise buyer, like ideally you have people on staff that come from that type of similar background.
Mhm.
So for instance, like sometimes people ask me like, yeah, okay, but if we wanted to hire somebody from an enterprise company, how would we vet and see if they're going to be good in a startup? And and my response is like, I just wouldn't do it. Like the risk is too high. And I know that there are exceptions and there are people that can make the transition, but I see it as like we need to remove as much risk as possible and we need to get this hire right. And we're more likely to get that hire right if they come from a highly relevant environment, which again, I think a lot of people push back on that philosophy. Um, but
I would
that's my
say
thought.
like you need them to have the relevant experience, but also the relevant stage as well. Like for
Yeah,
me, if they
exactly.
were at, say we were doing an e-commerce company and they were at Amazon or Wayfair, like that is hard to translate to a seed series 10, 15 person organization. Like maybe they had, I mean, it would depend on like what projects they worked on and did they ever create an environment in that way? They probably have really valuable skill sets, but like what else did they do in their career to give you a sense of security around like can they integrate into the team and are they actually going to do what you need them to do versus at Amazon, I'm sure they had exponential amount of resources and support and various, and maybe Amazon's not the best example, but
No,
moving
it's a
like
great
large
example.
enterprise into that is challenging. And
I,
then
I
I
think you
think
hit
the
the
other
nail on
really
the head.
challenging piece is like the people that got you there are not always the people that take you to the next step. And that becomes really challenging as well. So the people that got you from the C to the Series A are probably not the leaders that you need to go to your B and C and D round. Like it becomes such a different environment where you're managing 100 people on a team versus four.
Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. That is challenging. I think some of that one thing that I do with leaders too is I like to at an earlier growth stage, I like to hire people that still have something to prove and are kind of punching up.
Hmm.
So for instance, like I might give somebody who's truly a director a VP title. If they're an experienced director and I think that they have the right foundation, give them that shot as the first VP, but then also setting an expectation. And typically these are individuals that, are going to have access to stock options and stuff like that. But like, look, our goal is to grow this organization. And if that means you continue to lead the function, then that's what we'll do. But also be open to the fact that if we continue to grow and we feel like it's going to be better for your professional development and for the company's development to hire someone more experienced, like I need to make sure you're okay with that. So obviously that's easier said than done, but I think sometimes expectation setting around that can make it a little easier. But obviously, depending on how big the egos are and how experienced, if it's like a highly experienced VP that has, like this is their third, fourth startup, I think they're going to be a lot less okay with that than somebody that's kind of punching up, leveling up their skill set.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important early on to create the leveling structure that you want at scale, because that avoids a lot of painful conversations down the road. And so letting somebody punch above their weight and lead the team, maybe give them the title, maybe you don't, but at least create that flexibility for yourself, where if you do have to hire over them, you're not doing it in a way that you have to reset a bunch of stuff, or you're overpaying two people on that team. So I think that there's, I've learned that the hard way, like where you make mistakes early on in the structure, and then you have to figure out how to deal with them.
Right. And it's like just another thing to deal with when you just want to focus on growth. You
Yeah,
want to focus
exactly.
on the experience, the customer experience retention, and you want to focus on demand side, but then you're focused on all this org crap that just becomes incredibly complex and just takes the focus off growth and retention and
Yeah,
upselling and all that
100%.
kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Cool. Well, look, I know we're coming up on time here. This has been, a really fun conversation. I would actually love to continue it. If you enjoyed this, like we should just do this maybe like once a quarter, just have you on the show and just
Sure,
talk
happy
shop.
to.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool, cool. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a blast.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. Anytime, love to come. Um, so yeah, let me know.
Let's do it. Hey, real quick before we jump off, if people want to follow you, your company online, like where
Sure.
can they find you?
Our website's bookelevent.com. So you can check us out there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. My full name is Jonathan Conelias, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Well, for everybody tuning in, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. All right, that's it.